Great, and we're live. So welcome everybody to this remote interview. My name is Lisette and I'm interviewing people and companies doing great things remotely. And today on the line, all the way from Australia. So it's morning here I'm in Oslo today, and it's evening in Australia. So I hope that the day is good. But on the line today, I have HYETT and RUMA DAK from Envato. And I'm super excited to have you guys here. When I was in Australia, I got to visit your company and take a tour. Amazing stuff going on there, and I'm excited to share it with others. Let's start with the first question, though, which is, what does your virtual office look like? And what do you need to get your work done?
Hi, Lisette. Hi, everyone. Super excited to be on the podcast. What does our virtual office look like? We've got a very unique way and a very distributed workforce, a unique way of working. And so I kind of look at it as like a mixing bowl of all things. So we've got an outsourced help desk. We've got distributed people and teams working across Australia and the world. We have people working in our headquarters. We have people work from home, and we have people working from anywhere up to 3 months of a year. So at any point, at any time, people could be working at any location, and the people and the teams at Envato do a pretty good job at adapting to that.
Okay, we're gonna dive into some of those things, but Ruma, what does your virtual office look like?
Hi, everyone. So I'll be talking about some of the individual virtual offices that I have observed while at Envato in last 4 months, and I'll start with my own. So my virtual office is basically just my corner desk in my living room. And right now I just have one screen, which I'm using. Other than that, I like to have no clutter at my workplace. I like to reduce the noise, so I keep my door shut when I'm working. And one important thing for me to have around is a lot of books. My side shelves are full of books. I just love books. They make me happy. With some people at Envato in some sessions, I've observed they use special microphone setups like the ones from Blue Snowball or Blue Yeti, and they do it for very good audio experience so that any information is not missed. That's something I might try in near future. There's an interesting example which I would like to share with the audience. There's someone who wear a special footwear to let their family know that this is the work time, I'm working. So we find that quite interesting. And yeah, every day through the screens, we see some garages and basements being converted into beautiful workstations. So people are doing all kind of creative things to make the place work for them and make it a pleasant experience.
Now, are these people creating those offices from home, or is this in the Envato office itself?
Home as well.
Okay.
Envato, we have got hot desking, Lisette. So we don't usually keep our belongings on the desk. We have hot desking, but these things that I'm talking about mostly are from people who are working remotely. Yeah.
Okay, so it's a super interesting way that the company runs, and I want to dive into that in a second. But the first thing I want to ask is, what does Envato do for those who don't know? It's a pretty significant resource out there, and I don't know if many people even know.
Cool. So Envato was formed in 2006 in a garage in Sydney, and Envato is a two-sided marketplace. And so we've got people, digital creatives online that want to make a living online, and they've got some amazing creative assets. They put them on our marketplace, and we've got people that need to get creative projects done. And we bring those two together, creating the platform for them to either buy and sell, and get things done.
Can you give an example of somebody who comes onto the marketplace and then somebody who wants to buy that, like just to make it really tangible for folks?
Yeah. So an example of a creative, you might have someone that's making music, making audio files or making video files, and they're making those, and it's something they're passionate about, and they'll put that on our marketplace. And we've got people that say it's the credits for at the end of a movie that they're looking for some music to go with those credits, and they might come onto Envato and buy their credits and help get that project done. It could be anything. It could be stock footage that you're going to use in that PowerPoint presentation that you want to deliver. Our motto is, when the community succeeds, we succeed, and so we're all about bringing everyone together to get things done.
Wow. So interesting. Yeah. Super interesting business. And one of the interesting things that I learned about Envato while I was there is that you have this sort of 3-month work from anywhere policy. And I think that's it also goes to show, it speaks to how the company was formed and why the company was formed. I remember it's really unique. So I'd love to dive into what is this 3-month work anywhere policy that you guys have?
Our founders, when they started the company, they were something that was still passionate about was the ability to be able to travel while they did it. And that's kind of maintained, that flexibility is maintained at the heart of Envato still today. We've got a policy in there that, like you said, for up to 3 months, you can go and travel or you can go and work from another location. The 3 months part is the interesting part. More than 3 months, we start to get into some tax issues. And so we cap things at 3 months. But the great benefit of it is if, say for example, you lived in the UK and you were living in Australia, it's the ability to go home and spend time with your family. Add on to a holiday or just go and be with those people. Or, you want to escape, say, a Melbourne winter. The Melbourne winter, probably not as cold as some other places in the world, but us folks in Melbourne still think it's cold. And so you've got the ability to go and work somewhere warm in the winter months, for example.
So that's pretty unique. I want to dive into how you guys make this work. Because this is you've got people traveling everywhere. You have people hot desking, people working from home. It's a super open, flexible policy. How are you guys getting work done?
Well, the way that we make that work from anywhere policy work in particular is you can't just get up and say, hey, team, I'm just going to go and head off to the Bahamas, for example. When someone decides that they want to work from anywhere, we like them to put a plan in place and tell us how that's going to work, what they might be doing, what locations they might be in, how the time zone differences is going to work, and what they roughly plan to do during that time, to make it feel like the experience of being in the office or being with the team or being connected to the team. Other than that, our office is pretty set up. We've invested a lot to make the remote experience a really good one. So when you go into a meeting room at Envato, you'll see a TV. Big TV screen in all of our meeting rooms with some really nice cameras and a really simple way of jumping in the room, pressing a button and connecting people wherever they are. So trying to work really hard. We've worked really hard to make that experience as good as it possibly can be so that people can just get on with their job rather than mucking around with tech setup.
And one of the things that I noticed when I was there is you have a lot of different video conferencing rooms. So that's one of the things that I hear at a lot of companies is that there just isn't enough space to take a video conferencing call. In fact, most people aren't even doing video conferencing calls you've got the old spider phone sitting on the conference room table and you have to lean over it. And so you guys have actually made a concerted effort to put in a number of these different rooms so that nobody ever has to really search for something or you just don't run out of space. Do you ever run out of space?
Yes.
Really?
Sometimes, yeah. You can have one of the challenges that we have is that people will book meeting rooms and then they may not actually be in the office at that time, and so you can often find the need to find a space to collaborate with someone, but no meeting rooms available. And so that's one of the challenges and something that we're trying to work through at the moment. We've actually got something interesting happening next week in Envato. It's called Back to Base, and we're inviting and bringing most of our workforce back to HQ. And so it's going to kind of test the limit on desks and places to sit, but we're working hard to make sure that it's a good experience.
And why this back to base?
We think it's an opportunity for people to connect face to face. In particular, if someone's working full time from another location, it's the ability for them to come in and get a feel for HQ and just meet face to face with the people they work with closely on a day-to-day basis and spend a week with them.
Yeah. Like I've been at Envato for 4 months and I've been working closely with few people, but I've never seen them. And for me, it's a very good opportunity to see them in person, just to make those connections even stronger.
Okay. Yeah, I mean, seems like, a great, like most companies have some sort of a retreat that they invite
Yep.
people to come on. So this is sort of, home-based retreat. And yeah,
Yeah.
it's like retreat is the default, and then people come back to base.
Yeah.
To
It's like
connect.
an offsite which happens on site.
Yeah, love it. Love it. So it can't all be roses, right? You've got this very unique setup. People are all over the world traveling. What's hard? What's difficult? What do you guys struggle with? And I don't know who to address
Um,
the question to. So, hey, Ruma, I'll address it to you. I can't look somebody in the
yeah,
eye and say like,
sure.
you.
Yep. Um, because I am fairly new at Envato, it's been 4 months for me. I'll start with some of the struggles and challenges that I thought I would face. I was initially very skeptical of someone being remote in almost every meeting, session, or workshop that I would be a part of. And to be honest, it was a tad bit scary. But I guess I joined Envato when they were quite mature and remote working was the norm. So that struggle was not a big deal. But one of the common things that we face as a challenge is internet issues, and one or more people participating in the meeting will always have those issues. And it's never a good experience being on either side of these issues, but there is not much we can do about it. If we talk about our role as coaches, there are some workshops where we need to use physical props like cards. That has been a real struggle for. I can't talk on behalf of Jay, but yeah, we have spoken about it, and showing cards in a meeting room where the camera is so far from you, and then expecting people to read it out and respond. That's a bit of struggle. Um, Also, there is a lot more effort that goes towards prepping for the sessions, like having familiarity and access to the tools that you are going to use in the workshop or the session, having a backup plan because things might go wrong. That is one of the things that always scares me out when we are planning for a session or workshop. What if this goes wrong? What if it doesn't work? What if the tool goes offline? Things like that.
As delivery coaches, it can be quite interesting because normally, if everyone's co-located, normally is not right, but if everyone's co-located, you can read the room and you can get a sense of the energy in the room and how people are feeling. As a coach at Envato, you might be the only person in the room, and so you need to adapt and work with that. You might only get the size of the video screen to work with, and so it's encouraging people to turn their cameras on so that you can have that human connection with them through the video camera. It's also what Ruben touched on, just a little bit extra prep. So thinking about how you're going to adapt to a digital way of working. So less post-it notes, less Sharpies, more tools, tool-based things. Tools. We use a lot of tools. We use tools like Mural, which is a digital whiteboard, and collaboration tool for a lot of our workshops. The workshops that we do around planning out a piece of work or incepting a piece of work. And inside of team level stuff from a tool perspective, we use things like Trello for collaboration, and whereas we're very Scrum based in the way in which we work. So using things like Trello to show daily whip boards and backlogs. And we use tools like GroupMap. GroupMap's a retrospective tool or another workshop tool for how teams inspect and adapt and reflect at the end of their sprints. And heavy users of the G Suite. So the G Suite for us really works. We've got our Hangouts. We use Google Hangouts for the way in which we interact face to face. And every document is a live working document, so no need for paper. We collaborate in all the docs that we use.
So is it a completely paperless office?
I'd say it's pretty close to that. You'd still see the odd, bit of paper shuffled around here and there, but it's very rarely that you'd see someone standing at a photocopier or a printer. We don't really have very big photocopiers or printers. They're pretty small. They do the job, but having that sort of hallway conversation at the printer is not really a thing in Envato.
Yeah.
Good. It feels 1980s, but I mean, I see the need. I still have my paper notebooks and I like to write things down, and yeah, I'm very tactile. So, but you're right. When you're talking to other people virtually, then the paper is not necessarily going to cut it. So you do have to use other visualization tools. Now, I can imagine that this is so this is a new way of working for many, many people in the world. How do you hire people to work in this way? What do you look for when you're hiring? And I know this, I'm sort of going off the standard, but I'm standard list, but I'm really curious about, like, you need to find people with particular skills that are able to work in this way, that can sort of embrace this. So what do you look for in the hiring process that you find people?
I think a growth mindset is key to that. Someone that's open to exploring and trying different things. Someone that's flexible. People generally are pretty keen to sort of lean into this. I haven't come across too many people that aren't excited by the prospect of disconnecting from their desk and inside of an office, and the ability to be able to work from anywhere. There's a few things that people probably struggle with initially when they do arrive. If you're used to having the family photos and stuff on the desk and whatnot, but they quickly adapt to that. But looking for people, looking for growth mindset, curious, and you don't need to be perfect at it. I don't think we're perfect at it. It's just looking for that people that want to try and explore.
If I can add to it from the other side of the fence, because I did not hire, but I was hired.
Yeah.
So even if you're working remotely, your intention is the same, right? You have to collaborate with people to achieve a shared outcome. And that's what we all do, whether you are from behind the screen or whether you are located in the same workplace. So for me, it is making connections. If I have to make connections, I can do it in any way. And I always try to remember that behind the screen is always a human. They're just like you. If I'm remote for someone, the other person is remote for me. We are both remote for each other. So just put in that extra effort and try not to limit your conversations to work-related conversations. Try to build that rapport and have those chats where you can just grab a coffee in front of the screen and talk to the person.
So when you were first hired, was it intimidating to come into an environment that was so, it's pretty advanced for most companies. I mean, I really haven't seen a company that's set up like you guys are, and that encourages people to go and travel for 3 months and stay with go home, visit your family, have a good time.
When you talk about intimidating, listen, I'll share my experience. On my second day at Envato, I ran a retro because Jay and other coach were busy at that time, and I was free, and I said, okay, I'll run it. And you wouldn't believe, on my second day, where I hardly know anyone, I went to a room and I was the only one in the room facilitating a retro, and there were 7 people on the computer screen in front of me.
Wow.
But it was okay, because remote working is a norm at Envato. Everyone is doing it, so everyone supports you. You're not the only one there. So that really helped.
Wow. It's that sounds intimidating indeed. It's a retrospective remotely with 7 remote participants, and you're alone in person in the room on day 2. That's
Yes.
That's jumping in with both feet, I should say.
That's a real story.
Sounds like I threw in the deep end. Hey, Lizette.
Yeah, I'm like, well, you clearly hired a competent person that you knew that could handle it. Yeah.
Oh, thank you.
Absolutely no doubt about that.
Okay, so I'm really curious about how do you have particular trainings that you put people through when they come in, or do you just throw them in feet first and see what happens? But is there any sort of training that you put people through for this kind of work, or do people just start and find their way? Maybe there's not even a need for it.
I would say it's probably more, but there's probably more, we lean more towards people finding their way. As Ruma sort of touched on, people at Envato are generally there to help one another. And because we all experience this, if someone's their first time in a room, generally what will happen is, oh, it's your first time. Oh, well, this is how the Jabra works. This is how you jump into a hangout. And people will take that moment to induct the new person into that way of working. At that point, we don't host any sort of like formal training. on the remote tech side of things.
Mm-hmm.
Having said that, we do have a regular induction that the company runs that sort of gives you the overview of not just the company, but how we work.
And at Envato, we are very good at two things: calling out and reaching out for help. If we think we are struggling, we know we are not alone. We just call out and the help is there.
Amazing. So it's like, I want to work there. I'm tired of all this hustling as a freelancer. This sounds great. So I want to talk about the management, though, in terms of how you manage virtual colleagues and not just the working with, because it's a different style of management, I'm assuming. What are sort of the pain points, or sort of maybe not even the pain points, but some of the things you have to keep in mind when you're doing management of virtual colleagues?
I think, like Ruma touched on earlier, it's building trust with the people and building rapport with them, and sort of having those conversations like you would in the office, and checking in with them quite frequently, not letting them feel like they're isolated and alone. I think our managers at Envato do a great job of this. I know with the ones that I work closely with, they've got regular one-on-ones with their people, and they make
virtually.
Virtually. Yeah, virtually. They'll jump in and hang out, and regardless of where it is, it's just like if we were co-located and we were going to meet regularly to talk about our goals or how you're going, or just that regular check-in. They will do that virtually in a rhythm, like they were in the office. And there's no sort of boundaries of you're treated differently because you're remote, or you're treated differently because you're in the office. It's one for all. So however we work is how we all sort of agree to work, and be that one-to-one as a manager or as a team. So when teams set work agreements for how they're going to work together, they often take that lens of how do we work remotely together, or work with our colleagues that are remote. And that could be that, for example, when we're in a session, remotes go first, and that remotes are the first people to speak.
Oh, wow. That's a great tip for these hybrid meetings, is let the remote people speak first.
And we wait till remote people have gone away from the meeting. They've dropped out, and then we leave the room. So it's not disrespectful.
Oh, interesting. That's a great etiquette. So all the remote people have to hang up first, and then you guys leave the room.
Yep. We always stay to say bye to them.
We got some feedback in one of the retros that I was in around. Someone said that it felt like they were being hung up on the phone, or the phone was being slammed down when the team was leaving the room. And so the team acknowledged that, and they put in a work agreement around the fact that remotes exit first. We let them leave first, and let them say goodbye before the people in the room leave.
Great etiquette tip. That's going in the notes for sure. So let the remotes leave first. I want to ask about your working agreements. So does every team have their own work agreements, or is it a company-wide work agreement? Do you have both? How does that work at your company? Because not many people have working agreements like this.
It's mostly the teams that have work agreements. So most teams would have working agreement sessions, and they review them every 3 months. That's the cadence. And it's up to the team. We have seen different things being agreed on by different teams, depending on how many people are working remotely, how many are co-located. Some are around Slack communication, some are around the example that we talked about, that remote people will be the first ones to exit the meeting. Anything that the team comes up with, we give them the flexibility, and they choose their working agreements.
Working agreements they're not mandatory at Envato, but what I'd find is that I'd say that most teams have them in place. Even our senior leadership team have a set of work agreements that you can see, just so if you can get an understanding of how they work and how they might make decisions. And then you'll see leadership teams. I know leadership teams in Envato, other leadership teams have a set of work agreements down into the team level for how they're going to work together. So it's sort of a common practice, but not a mandatory practice.
Yeah, a wise practice, if you
Yeah.
ask me. It seems like wise.
Yeah.
Now, are these work agreements, they're open for everybody? So anybody, like I'm assuming you have them in your G Suite, so there's it's a Google Doc or some sort of file that people keep, but anybody can access anybody else's working agreement?
Yeah, the NAV work agreements are transparent, and anyone can see anyone else's. We use them. We use the really good ones as an example. In particular, if Ruma or I are facilitating a work agreement session for a team, some people need a little bit of inspiration or a little bit of guidance, and
Yeah.
we use them as like, here's some examples that other teams are doing that you might want to consider.
Wow. Brilliant. And so is there ever any issues with individual working agreements? Say, for instance, I am working on 3 or 4 different teams. Would that mean that I have 3 or 4 different work agreements depending on the team that I'm working with at the moment? Or are you pretty much just on one team? How would that work?
I would say we work pretty hard to get it down to one team. But there may be people, say you're in a leadership role, for example, you may have about 3 teams underneath you. And so it's probably just being mindful of the agreements that are in those other teams. And it's also your opportunity that if you don't believe that that's right, or you can't accommodate, you can't, bend to that, or you can't work in that way, that you're having that conversation. And that's at the heart of these agreements, is actually, when was the last time you used them, and when was the last time you called them out, so that they're not just something that you write down on a piece of paper or in a Google Doc or a Trello board and stick away somewhere. They're actually living and breathing things that you're practicing.
And we also try to restrict the number of working agreements that we have for any given team, so that it doesn't get too overwhelming.
Yeah.
It's not that you're just concentrating on following some working agreements. They are guidelines.
Yeah.
Right. So not super strict rules and yeah.
No.
So how do you know what each other are doing on your teams? How do you keep track of that?
Do you want us to talk about how we keep track of it as coaches? How Ruma and I know what each other are doing?
Yeah, let's start there. Let's start there. Like, yeah, how do you guys know what each other? I mean, I'm just, when you're working remotely, you can't see other people, and so it's often, when we're in an office, we can be like, oh, okay, yeah, Sue's there, and I can see that she's doing this, and oh, so and so is there, and you can, you think you know what people are doing because you can see them, of course, but you never know what they're actually doing. So it's a bit of a trick question. But on remote teams, you're out of sight and sometimes out of mind, and so it can be really hard to know what's going on. So I'm just curious, like, how does the company know? Yeah, we can start with like how you guys know what each other are doing, but then let's move into how do people at the company know what each other? How do you guys stay aligned? Is really the question.
So we start our day with a daily stand-up, similar to what the teams that we coach would, and we visualize our work as coaches about what we're working on, and we'll talk through that. What we're focused on what we were focused on yesterday, what we're focused on today. Do we need any help or any support? And then we'll jump into if we're remote in particular, we'll jump into our day. We make sure that we check in throughout the day on using Slack. So if we're working on a document, for example, we'll share the link if we've been working on it for review, just so that we've got a presence and people know that we're working through stuff. One thing that we've adopted recently is in Slack when it's time for lunch.
I knew you would say that.
The lunch lady from the Simpsons, we've got an emoji of her in Slack, and so we throw the lunch lady in, and that lets the team know that we're out to lunch, and we'll be back soon. And at the end of our day, we have a gratitude retro, and that comes up at 4:30 every day, and that tells us to begin to sort of slow down and wind up our day. One of the challenges with remote working sometimes, and I experienced this firsthand, where you can just keep going and going and going and going because there's no cue to leave. At the office, like watching someone get up and go, you can just keep going. And so having something like the gratuity retro pop up in Slack telling you what went well today, list 2 things that went well, is that sort of reminder that, all right, now it's time to slow down and sort of end the day. Did I miss anything, Ruma, on the way in which we work?
No, you covered pretty much everything, but if I can summarize it in one sentence for you, Lisette, and for our audience, when it comes to communication and collaboration, it's not exaggerating if I say that you can say we are on steroids. We just communicate as much as we can. use every platform out there. We just abuse or exploit our tools to our maximum benefit.
Yeah, absolutely. And so just quickly from a team perspective, what you'll see happen in the team is around that sort of morning time, their Slack channels will light up with hands waving and different things to let people know that people are online, or they're in the office, or they're working from this location. And then you'll sort of see that pattern happen in the Slack channels during the day. And towards the end of the day, you'll begin to see that noise. I'd say communication wise, like you touched on, Ruma, it's very noisy in our Slack channels.
Yeah, like for just today's example, Lisette, I had a headache in the afternoon and I wanted to have a nap. I just put it on the channel and everyone had a thumbs up emoji there. So we like to make everyone, to let everyone know this is what we are working on, this is what we are doing, and this is the time while we'll be away from our MacBooks. And when I was back, I just posted it there, I'm back.
Wow. So you just said, hey, I'm going to go take a nap. I'll be back.
Yeah.
And then basically
Yes.
a bunch of people give you a thumbs up. That's not
Yes.
normal at a company.
It's just like it's like I'm at work and people know when I'm not at my desk, I'll be absent from my desk, right? They can't see me physically. And we did the same using Slack today.
Love it. So is there ever so one of the problems that people come up with is that there is too much communication. You know, that it can be a Slack overload. Like you open Slack and there's like a million messages and things are going on and people are just quickly like, oh my God, I feel flustered and a bit scrambled. And how do you guys manage that sort of, overload, shall we say? Or does it not feel like overload?
It does. Some teams have complained about it, and a lot of it is covered in their working agreements. One thing that usually a lot of teams do is carry out their Slack conversations in a thread so that it's not a clutter. If it is a specific conversation, take it to a separate Slack thread or maybe a channel. Yeah. Do you have anything else to add, Jay?
Yeah, I would think about the work that you're doing, and what type of either environment or tools that you need to use. So if you need to do some deep focus work, having Slack on may not be the best thing. So just calling out, like if that's me, I'd be calling out to the team on Slack, hey folks, I'm just about to deep dive into something. I'd throw the focus time emoji up in my status, and then I would actually either turn Slack off or I'd put it into do not disturb for that period. And you will see people put their Slack into do not disturb, for example, just to make sure that, you know, I'm focused and I'll be back in an hour or two, just to make sure that you're getting it done to cut out that noise.
Yeah, because you could sit in front of Slack and just watch messages come in if you want. So
yeah, I was having this conversation with someone today. It's like the virtual way of someone coming up to you and tapping you on the shoulder, right? Just constantly, you'll be working away. It's like, hey, hey, hey. And so turning it off is also a good thing.
It sounds like also that people need to have control of their own. We have to be in control of our own notifications, our own boundaries. And so it's really sort of a personal responsibility there for people to say like, hey, I need a nap, or hey, I need 3 hours of focus time. You know, if you really need me, then tap me on the shoulder, WhatsApp or something. But in that time, I really need to focus. So it sounds like it's sort of an individual responsibility there.
Definitely.
Okay. So how do you guys handle conflict on the team? Because that must come up. So are there standard procedures, or does everybody just love each other? I know you have conflict. Everybody's got conflict. How does that get dealt with remote colleagues?
That is an interesting one, and you're right. It's not always all roses. One of the ways in which handling conflict, in particular in person, is to, you know, use techniques like getting people to stand shoulder to shoulder and talk about something, which is hard to do, which would be hard to do. So what I'm describing there is standing shoulder to shoulder and say having a whiteboard and you know, brainstorming something on there, or talking at something rather than at each other.
Mm-hmm. But that's in person, right? So like if you're
that's in person. Yeah. So I haven't actually done this yet. It may be something you should try, but there could be a way in which you would need to sort of adapt that for people that may be in conflict, or teams that may be in conflict. I'm going to throw you in the deep end, Ruma. Do you have any ideas?
She's used to it. You can totally do this.
To be honest, I haven't had any conflict as of now. Touch wood. I've been very fortunate. But I would like to say that why do you put in the remote equation there? If you have a conflict, it's the same whether you're remote or not. You just need to have that conversation with empathy. You can do it from behind the screen. I understand reading emotions is a bit difficult, but it is doable. You just have to put in little more efforts. Just make that effort to have a chat with the person you have a conflict with, or get some help.
Mm-hmm.
And
It,
probably
it
doing
shouldn't be that difficult.
and doing it at point easy, right? So doing it sooner rather than letting something build up.
Yeah. So I ask about the remote aspect of it because one, it's very easy to hide behind our screens. You can be like, oh man, Joan just annoyed me and I'm going to just close the laptop and go for a walk instead of actually confronting the person that was annoying. A lot of people just close the laptops and let it go. And then that builds up over time. And the other weird aspect about remote I'm finding as I'm learning also is when dealing with conflict, it's really confronting to sit across like the table from somebody, and online we can't stand shoulder to shoulder. And so then, we're really face to face, and not only we're face to face, like we're really close face to face in this way. So it can be really, I think, intimidating to have those conversations online. And so I just was curious if there was a technique that you guys use, but it sounds like it's a pretty solid team.
I guess it's also because of the culture that we have at Envato. We are so used to doing it, and we do it for every kind of session that we have. Like, even though Jay and I are in Melbourne, we have had our one-on-ones remote from behind the screen. So you get used to it. So having those conversations is not that challenging, if
And
I
we
can
can,
put it that way.
yeah, I mean, it makes a lot of sense. It's funny that we focus so much on like, oh, it's remote and it's going to be a lot harder, but actually it's just a screen in between you instead of air.
Yes.
And
Yes.
it's not that different. So it sounds like it's weird until you get used to it. And once you're used to it, it's totally not weird anymore. So it's just really a matter of people getting used to this type of behavior, this way of working.
Yeah, and call it out that it feels a bit awkward to me. What is it like for you? It just opens up that conversation.
Do you have people that can't adapt to this way of working? Like they come into Envato and they don't like it. They want 9 to 5 in the office every day.
We have people that will come into the office every day and their preference is to be in the office, and you'll see them in the office all the time. It's very much a personal preference. And that doesn't mean that you can't work in Envato, because that environment, that office environment is actually amazing, and it's a place that you truly want to go to. And they've done an amazing job to make it that experience the way it is. So it's very much a personal preference, and those people that are anchored that they want to work in the office, they've actually adapted to that their team could be anywhere.
So they just have a personal preference for coming into the office for whatever reason. Maybe they don't have a proper setup at home, or they don't like to travel.
Yeah.
Everything's there at the office. Do you have people who have trouble with the hot desking? Because I know that there's some people that really like their desk. I want my plants and I want my family pictures and whatever. And that's sort of the common complaint that you hear. But do people have trouble with that?
Yeah, we do, and everyone's different. People do sort of hone in on the same place. Not every desk is a hot desk at Envato, so we do have some places where teams just generally congregate, and that's where they are. But it's very much, again, a personal preference. For me, I like the ability to change my environment up and work with the people that I need to. That's probably the nature of my role. I may need to work with different people in different teams, and so being with those people is important. If you just need to focus, you may need a quiet space in the office regularly with your stuff set up. And so it's about creating an environment that caters to all.
Okay.
I used to kind of dislike it in the beginning, but I'm used to it now.
So again, another maybe it's weird to begin with, and then you get used to it, and it's
it's actually fun now, sitting with different people, sitting on different floors, sometimes going to the basement to have that quiet corner. Yeah. it's like you have to embrace it, like you embrace any other new tool or technique or a way of working. It's just one of those things.
Okay. So Ruma, I want to go back to something that you mentioned in the very beginning. I thought that was really, really interesting. And this is the question of the footwear. So somebody who puts on different footwear to let their family know whether they're working or not. Can we dive into that really quickly? Because I thought I didn't want to skip over that. I want to make sure.
Okay. I'm pretty sure that person would listen to this podcast.
Great.
We'll share it with him otherwise.
Yeah.
So
it's just a way of showing to their family that we are working and it's better not to disturb us at this point.
This person's got a setup. He lives in New South Wales, which is in a different state in Australia. He's got a setup. I think it's outside, or I think it's like in a basement type setup.
It's in the basement. Yeah.
Yeah, it's in the basement.
Yeah.
And so he was telling us that he puts his shoes on, and during the day, if he needs to go up, or his kids come in that room, they know that if Dad's got their shoes on, that he's working, and they know not to sort of disturb him. But if his shoes are off, open slather.
Wow. Well, that's a great technique. Most people have like doors or a sign or something, but footwear, that's a new one. I'm going to have to test that one out. I'm going to try that with my husband and be like, no, look, my working shoes are on. Like, don't interrupt.
Footwear is an interesting icebreaker for people out there too. If you're looking to do an icebreaker, get people to take a photo on their smartphone of their shoes and Slack it or email it or put it somewhere that everyone can see what people are wearing. You'll uncover amazing things. You'll see people with bare feet and shoes and maybe moccasins and all sorts of things.
I'm like, I don't want to be doing that right now. I'm not going to show it, but I'll describe it. So, when I flew to Australia from Europe using Air Emirates, they give you these little bags, and inside the bag you get a toothbrush and like a little, the eye thing. And they also give you these slippers that you can wear on the plane. And I didn't use them, and I thought, oh, okay, I'm going to an Airbnb, and so I brought these orange Air Emirates slippers that I'm not going to show anybody.
Nice.
So you would find interesting things just doing such an icebreaker, something like that. Yeah, it's not just bare feet and shoes; it's random stories.
Yep.
So we're reaching the end of our time, which is crazy. It went really fast, and I still have a couple of questions. One is, what advice would you give for people who are just starting out? If they want to work in sort of this way, where would you advise people to start? Like, what do they need, or what should they be thinking about?
I don't think it's ever been easier to actually lean into this. So you think about it, all laptops have cameras now, smartphones have cameras. So the ability and the tech is actually easily accessible. So it's, you can get a Google Hangout for free as part of your Google account, that sort of stuff. So that technology base is there. It's probably the biggest thing is the trust and the ability to actually begin to lean in. My advice when people ask me this question is start small. Maybe start with, everyone, or a day at home, and testing it out and try little experiments to see how it might work, and then sort of retro those or get some feedback and see how you're going to make them better.
If I can add a few more things to that,
please.
Like Jay said, connect with people, and by connecting, I mean just don't have formal work-related meetings with people. Catch up with them one-on-one informally. Have that coffee with them. If you are new to remote working, do some reading, talk to people who have been doing it, and use the tools and embrace it. Like I said earlier, it's like any other tool or technique or way of working. So just try little experiments and have a workstation. Like if you're working remotely, don't just work from your bed or couch. And trust me, remote working is a privilege. So use it to maximize the benefit for yourself and for your organization. So be a little professional and use it to your benefit.
Oh, I love it. Remote work is a privilege. And indeed it is. It's a luxurious privilege.
Yeah. So, it can make a lot of difference to your work-life balance.
Yeah.
How has it affected your work-life balance? No, I know I said it was the last question, but I had to ask.
Okay. For me, it's more about flexibility. Like I can finish my meetings, end my workday at 3 o'clock, hit the gym, come back, have my dinner, and then work for a couple of hours after having my dinner. So that flexibility, I love it. I can do the things that I want to do. In Australia, everything closes at 5. So if I want to do something before 5, I can do that. If I want some quiet time, thinking time to do my work, I can do that later from home when I'm alone at home and just come back home on time. So things like that, they make a lot of difference.
Yeah. For me, it's about adapting to adapting the environment to the type of work that I'm doing. So if I need a quiet space with deep thinking, I can go and find that space and be in that space. If I want to be around a lot of people, then I can go to that space and find that space. On a personal level, I've got a young family, and so the flexibility it provides to be there and support them when I need to and still get my work done is great. I help coach my son's basketball team. And so the ability to work remotely from time to time for me helps me do things that I'm really super passionate about.
Yeah, I start to question when I hear these kind of answers. I start to question, like, why wouldn't a company put this in place? Like, clearly seeing how happy it makes people and the loyalty that I think probably it gives for employees that you have there. I mean, who would go back to the old style of 9 to 5 in the same location every single day at the same desk when you could have this sort of work-life flexibility? It's starting to boggle my mind a little bit. Like, why wouldn't you do this? So yeah, could you ever go back to the other, I would say the normal, but it's not normal anymore, but the other way of working? Could you ever go back?
I would always want to have some flexibility because work-life balance is really important to me. So I cannot work for a place where they require me to be at work for a certain number of hours every single day.
The topic of remote is actually becoming a hotter topic. I'm finding it being discussed at more meetups and more conferences and on social media platforms more often. And I think that's largely also thanks to people like yourself, Lisette, and the great work you do with this podcast and your amazing book. So I actually think that it's probably going to evolve to something that's going to become the norm in the very near future.
Yeah, I would agree. I mean, I'm biased, so it's hard to say, but yeah, I totally agree. Like this, and who would go back? Why would you give up any sort of flexibility? I think freedom is a super strong motivator for people to enter into this world. And it's nice to see companies like Envato who are actually encouraging it. Okay, one more question, and then I promise we'll we'll go. Where do you guys take the 3 months? It's not a holiday, the 3-month work from anywhere. Do you guys use that yourselves? Ruma, I'll start with you.
Want me to say something?
Yeah.
So I'm going away to Adelaide. It's not work from, like, I'm not going overseas, but I'll be in Adelaide for 11 days. And out of those 11 days, I'm going to work for 5 days. So that would be my first, like being away from headquarters for that long. And because my family are back in India, maybe later this year I'll be doing some remote work from India.
Okay.
But it also depends on the role. Given our roles, it's not that easy to work remotely for 3 months at a stretch. Yeah, so I'll take it as an experiment. Start with like few days and see how we go. Yeah.
I actually haven't made use of it just yet, but another coach that used to work in Envato had, and just leveraging a little bit what Ruma said, it can be difficult for our role in particular. We had a really solid plan in place. This person went to Thailand, he went to Brazil as well, and Western Australia. He was quite remote and quite in very different locations. One of the biggest challenges was time zone and needing to shift so much that he was working in the night, and just doing that over a really long period wasn't sustainable. And so probably for our roles, we just need to adjust what that looks like.
Yeah, time zones are tricky. I mean, you start to get into physics there. So there's just nothing, I mean, with the tools and technology, that's great. We can talk to each other. But once it starts to be 2 a.m. someplace and somebody's got to be up in the middle of the night or, you know, or even, or worse, then it starts to become, yeah, there's just physics in the way at that point.
Yeah, if you're doing like, you say you're working 6 or 7 hours in a day and you're doing that, you know, from 11 p.m. up until the wee hours of the morning, and then you want to actually also experience the place that you're traveling in, you know, that's not really sustainable over a long period of time.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah. Time zones, I think, are just going to be an ongoing challenge for everybody. It's just sort of the nature of the beast. Okay. So I said that we were going to do 25 minutes and here we are almost an hour, and I apologize, but I think everybody needs to hear this story. It's such a unique company setup and such a great way of working that I really loved it. Thanks for letting me deep dive so much into that. And then the very last question is, if people want to get in touch with you to ask you more questions or to talk a little bit more about that, what's the best way to find you? And we'll start with Jay.
Best way to find me, I'm on Twitter. Handle is HYETT, just the letter J, or you can reach out to me on LinkedIn. If you're in Melbourne and you want to come out to Envato for a tour, you're interested in that, hit us up and we can have a conversation about coming and checking it out. Ruma?
Yep. I am on Twitter, but I'm not a Twitter bird like Jay. So don't contact me on Twitter, please. Contact me on LinkedIn. My name is RUMA DAK. It should be easy to find me there.
And I'll put it in the show notes too, so people can just click on the link in the show notes to find you.
Sure.
And I highly, for people that are listening, if you are in Melbourne, I really recommend going and seeing the office. It's a beautiful office and it's great to see how it's set up. So that you can get an idea of how you're communicating with people. So I got to take a tour, thankfully, and highly recommend it. Thank you both for your time today and for allowing me to take such a deep dive. I really appreciate it.
It was pleasure being here, Lisette. Thank you.
Thank you, Lisette. That was awesome.
All right, everybody. Until next time, be powerful.